structured.
How do you evoke drama with things that are mundane?
That's
that
right.
Are, you know, just people doing, you know, living out their religion on a day-to-day basis.
That's exactly the case. And great revivals, the Great Awakening. You'll find the Great Awakening in textbooks, and in at least you're beginning now to find, you know, Billy Graham, the great Billy Graham revivals of the 1950s, and certainly in the textbooks that I'm responsible for, there's a good deal of attention to the emergence of conservative religious Protestant evangelicals in the post-1970 period, and yet I admit this, I structure it primarily in terms of the political and foreign policy ramifications of the emergence of politicized conservative religion, rather than the sort of inwardness of the experience and what this has meant in the daily lives of individual believers. Another issue in bringing religion into textbooks is the question of religious sensibilities and the sort of issue of the separation of religion from the public sphere. And there's no logical reason that means it shouldn't be discussed in a quote secular textbook that is widely adopted across the spectrum of religious belief and religious unbelief. And yet I probably would have to confess that as a textbook writer, in the back of my mind there is that awareness I'm treading here on sacred ground in a sense, that I'm dealing here with issues that one group or another among my readers or among the textbook committee that's going to be adopting or considering this textbook, or with the instructors who are deciding whether to adopt it or not. When you get into issues of religious faith, you're getting onto very sensitive, deeply felt issues where you feel you want to tread very carefully. So that's another consideration that does come into play in thinking about how religion should be treated in a textbook.
What would be maybe one of the hardest, or, you know, some of the hardest religious movements to try to incorporate, that they just, you know, a religious movement that just doesn't seem to fit? Would be ones that are kind of on the periphery, or that haven't had a large political influence?
That's a good question. I would say both the more peripheral, from the point of view of a kind of mainstream perspective, the more peripheral religious movements, one struggles to treat those with fairness and to understand sometimes doctrinal issues that are rather technical and specific, and to deal with those fairly and accurately. And religious movements that haven't risen to the level of public visibility in the sense of social engagement, social activism, political engagement, more quietist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I come from an Anabaptist background, and they used to call themselves the quiet in the land. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we're peaceful people. We're just here doing our thing, and you know, the public sphere is out there, but it's not really our concern.
Whereas Quakers can be fit in because of abolitionism or peace advocacy, or
that's true. The quiet in the land, the image is really not very accurate, because
Mm-hmm.
Anabaptists and Quakers have been very active on social issues and issues of peace and war, and so on. So you're quite right about that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Is there anything right now that you're working on that's sort of that your attention has been focused on lately, or?
Well, I'm involved in various things. We are involved in preparing a new edition of the college text, the Enduring Vision, and one of the chapters that I'm responsible for is the final chapter. So it's been a considerable challenge to deal with the events of American history since 2001, since 9/11. when you stop and think, the destruction, the trauma of 9/11, the political consequences of that domestically and the Iraq War, the enormous divisions that occurred in American life over the policies of the Bush administration, and then at the end of that, the election of the first African-American president, and the controversies that have ensued over health care reform and basic issues of civil liberties in America. All of this in one short chapter. At the same time, the textbook, the 7th edition, we've been mandated from the publisher, needs to be 10% shorter. So there's a real challenge.
So you do have to say goodbye, so-and-so, goodbye.
That's right. Events that the first edition of the Enduring Vision was published right at the end of the Reagan years, and we're now at the 7th edition, and think of what's happened since then. So issues that loomed large and that were treated rather fully 20-25 years ago now are compressed to a paragraph or two, even if they still are present at all.
Political activity in South America and Central America would now have to be truncated. From the 80s.
Yes, very much so. And you know, sometimes I hear a public figure or politician say, well, history will have to decide that. And I sort of sit back and say, yes, that's right. There is a continual process. You know, they sometimes say journalism is the first draft of history, but in a way textbooks are the second draft. That in the processes of deciding what to include or what to exclude or what to compress is really driven by very practical considerations of length and what can be incorporated in a textbook of a given length. But the effect of that is really a very profound one of shaping a story of what is important.